Hello, this story is called The Sea King's Daughter. There was once a musician called Sadko who lived in the Russian city of Nizhny Novgorod. Nizhny Novgorod was an amazing place. It was Russia's greatest port, and ships came from all over the world, bringing treasures from every land. Gold and silver, jewels of every kind, herbs and spices, beautiful materials, in fact anything you could ask for, was found in Nizhny Novgorod. Of course, there were many rich people in Nizhny Novgorod, and they loved to have parties. So every night they would invite musicians to come and play for them at the parties. And that's how Sadko made his living. He played an instrument that was a bit like a guitar called a guzli. It's sort of a bit fatter and rounder than a guitar. Every night he would play at the parties. His friends used to say, Sadko, why don't you try and make some money yourself? You'd be far richer than playing your guzli every night. But Sadko said, it makes me happy to make music every night. And I can flirt with the young ladies. Admittedly, it's rather sad when they go home and ignore me, but you can't have everything. They give me food from the parties as well, and they pay me a little. It's enough to get by. And so that was how Sadko lived. There were occasionally nights when he didn't have anything to do, and on those occasions he'd go down to the riverside, and he'd sing a song, instead of to the young ladies, to the river. He'd sing, "Oh lovely river Volkhov, I'm so in love with you. Though I am just a poor boy, I long to marry you. If you were only human, then we'd be wed for sure, and we could live together in this city we adore." But the river would just flow on by and ignore him. It was only a river after all. Then, on one of those nights, something strange happened. As he was singing, something happened in the water. Something was coming up, out of the water. Something with long green hair and a crown upon his head and a great big trident, a sort of three-headed stick in his hand. Sadko knew who it was, a figure of renown, a figure from myth. It was the Sea King himself. Oh no, he's upset the Sea King. What's he going to do? He said, "Oh sir, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you with my singing. I'm hoping it hasn't offended you." "Offended you? Offended me? Of course not," said the Sea King. "It was lovely, it was delightful. I've been here to visit my daughter, the Princess Volkova, the River Princess. Now I'm going back to my palace under the sea. But I enjoyed your music so much, I'd like you to come and play for me. Will you do that?" "Of course, sir," said Sadko. He didn't feel he could say anything else. "Good, that's good. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. In the meantime, here's a down payment." And the Sea King reached into the water and pulled out a golden fish that flipped and flopped in his hands. He threw it across the water to Sadko, who reached out and just managed to catch it. As he caught it, flipping, flopping fish turned into hard, solid gold. This was riches beyond Sadko's wildest dreams. "But sir," he said, how will I know how to get to you?" But the Sea King had gone. That was the end. What was Sadko going to do? He'd been given this huge down payment. He couldn't then turn away from it, his job. But how could he get to the Sea King's palace? He wandered back to his lodgings in the city, tucking the fish underneath his arm, trying to hide it from other people. The next morning, when he woke up, he thought it must all have been a dream. But he turned to look at his bedside table, and there was the golden fish. He hurried to get dressed and rushed down to the market and asked around to find the best price he could. Eventually, he got 3 great big fat bags of gold. It was riches more than he had ever dreamt of. He decided that he would buy himself a passage on a boat. Somehow, he thought, I'll find out how to get to the palace under the sea if I do that. So he went down to the harbour. He went past all the beautiful buildings in Nizhny Novgorod that he loved so much. And when he found a ship that was heading out to sea, he asked the captain if he could go on it. "If you give me one of those bags of gold, you're welcome," said the captain. So that's what they did. Soon they were setting sail across the Gulf of Finland and out into the Baltic Sea. Sadko was so excited, but he didn't know what to do to reach the palace under the sea. A storm started to blow up. The storm grew wilder and wilder and wilder. The ship was tossed from one side to the other. Sadko felt himself feeling sick, but there was nothing he could do about it. The sailors started running around, trying to mend all the bits that had got broken in the wind. "We're all going to die," they shouted. "What shall we do?" Sadko knew then that this was the doing of the Sea King, and there was only one thing he could do. He had to jump off the ship and somehow make his way to the Sea King's palace. He climbed up the end of the ship, and the sailors shouted, "Stop, stop, you'll kill yourself!" But too late. Sadko jumped, with his gusli in one hand and his 2 remaining bags of gold in the other, and fell down, down, down into the sea, going deeper and deeper and deeper. He expected to drown, but some kind of magic was protecting him, the magic of the Sea King himself, and eventually he found himself standing at the very bottom of the sea. He looked around himself, and all he could see around him were fish, coral, seaweed, all the things you'd expect to see under the sea, but no palace. And then, there it was, in the distance, a great, beautiful white stone palace, built entirely under the water. There were lobsters guarding the outside, and swimming in and out were all the different animals of the sea. The turtles, the fish, the crabs, every kind of animal you could imagine. Sadko knew that was where he had to go. When he got to the palace, he was shown inside and went into a great ballroom where they were having a big party, except there was no music, no dancing. The king was sitting on his throne. "Ah, Sadko," he said, "there you are at last. We need some music. Get playing at once." So Sadko, taken aback by the whole thing, had no choice but to start playing. He started to pluck his gusli. At first, it was slow. And the king said, "Oh, that was very nice, but make it faster. We need some action here." So Sadko began to pluck a very, very lively tune, and the king began to dance. He whirled and whirled around with great energy. And the queen ushered to Sadko. She said, "You must stop, Sadko. If the king continues to dance so energetically, he will cause a great storm on the surface of the water, and all your friends and your ship will be killed." Sadko realized he had to do something, but he couldn't just refuse to play anymore. He came up with an idea, and he plucked really hard, and one of the strings broke. He stopped at once. "I'm sorry, sir. My gusli is broken. I cannot continue tonight." "Oh, never mind," said the Sea King. "I have other plans for you as well." And he called together all the princesses of the sea. He said to them, "I have found a suitable husband for one of you. Which one will take him?" So one by one, the princesses walked past Sadko to inspect him, looking him up and down very suspiciously, sniffing him, staring at him, and then walking on by. As they did, each one whispered something in the king's ear. "Well," said the king, "I have bad news for you, Sadko. Not one of my princesses wants to marry you." "Wait a minute," said Sadko, "there's one more." And walking down, past the king, was one final princess, more beautiful than any of the others. "Oh, that's my youngest daughter, the Princess Volkova. I believe you know her already. You often sing songs to her by the riverside." "This is the River Volkhov?" said Sadko. "Yes, of course, that's one of the names she goes by." The Princess Volkova looked him up and down, gave him a sniff, and whispered something in the king's ear. The king said, "The princess will marry you tomorrow morning. Everybody go home and get ready for the wedding." And with that, all the fish cleared out of the palace immediately. The next morning, Sadko woke up very, very nervous. What would it mean to get married to a princess of the sea? What was going to happen today? He reported to the ballroom just before the wedding was due to take place, and the queen again ushered him across. She said, Sadko, you cannot marry this princess. If you do, then you will find yourself marooned here forever. You will never be able to leave. You will never return to your beloved city of Nizhny Novgorod." "Never to return," said Sadko. "What can I do?" But it was too late. The trumpets blasted, "Doodle-doodle-doo," and in walked the Princess Volkova, ready to marry him. The king stood ready to conduct the ceremony. He looked first at the Princess Volkova and asked her if she would marry this human man. "Yes," said the princess, "I will." The princess then looked at him, and the king looked at Sadko too, and said, "Sadko, will you marry this princess of the sea?" He looked at the king, he looked at the princess. What could he do? "No," he said. "No, I cannot. I cannot marry you. I never return to my home city of Nizhny Novgorod." There was a murmur in the crowd, an angry murmur. "He will not marry her. He has refused a princess of the sea. He cannot do this. He cannot do this." The shout grew louder. "You cannot do this. You cannot do this. You cannot do this." They got to their feet. They started shouting and hurling things at him. Sadko felt himself growing dizzy as the water swirled about him. Everything went black. And then he was unconscious. When he woke up, he was no longer under the sea, in the palace. He was lying on his bed, in his lodgings at Nizhny Novgorod. Had it all been a dream? He turned and looked to his bedside. And there on the bedside was his gusli, with one string broken, and 2 bags of gold, with a strand of seaweed next to them. Sadko never really found out what had happened, but he knew that he would now make his fortune with the bags of gold, and he did. He became a very rich man. He found himself a suitable bride among the young ladies that in the past had just ignored him because he was only a gusli player. And they lived happily ever after. But sometimes he used to go down to the river and sing his song once more. "Oh, lovely river Volkhov, I was so in love with you. Though I was just a poor boy, I gave my heart to you. If you had been a human, I'd have married you for sure. But we could not live together in that palace you adored." And sometimes he thought he saw a beautiful head popping out of the water and smiling with a single tear in one eye before it disappeared again under the water. But that was the only time he ever saw the princess again. That is the story of the Sea King's daughter.